IMHO Talk Show.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles.
It's Max.
Razor.
You see how I slowed it down a little bit for you? Give you a little time.
I know how you do.
Yeah, but thank y'all for joining us. Stay in tune, family, because we are at the bottom of another show. But don't go nowhere yet, because we still have some great information that you guys to know about. And we are joined once again by our homegirl, frequent guest, always doing good activism in the community, in the world. Just love watching her. I'm gonna date myself right now. Love watching her grow up. How about that? That's right. We go way back, but none other than Miss Zyhana Bryant.
Right.
Zai, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. And happy Commander Sunday to all who celebrate the finer things in life.
Hey, I guess
show.
shots fired right here. Hey, so Zai, just wanted to have you in here today so you can let the folks know what you've been up to. Some folks, I'm sure, have seen some of the great work that you've been doing with the teens and youth over the summer. And now going into as the school year start, sort of let folks know what's atop the agenda, so we can know how we can support further.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. There's a lot of things that I've been kind of working on this summer. One being just connecting with other young people in the community. I know that there's an ongoing initiative that I've been doing for a few years, actually since 2020, to support first gen Black students who are heading off to college for the first time. And a first generation student would be someone who is attending college and is the first in their family to do so. So we know that there are so many kind of unspoken rules and things that you need to learn about college before you get there. And just like even what to wear. If there's a convocation, do you wear a white dress? Like all of those things that literally I was learning throughout my process of transitioning into school at UVA. So I know that there are so many things that you just may not know, and it may not even cross your mind. And so my goal is to try to help fill some of those gaps. And, we do crowdfunding and we collect resources, and then I go out and do all of the shopping at local stores and, assemble these kind of care packages and baskets for the students who need dorm essentials or required text for their courses and give it to them as they go off, but also with a commitment to do further mentoring. So check-ins and dinners or lunches, meetups, to be able to make sure that they're doing well throughout the entire semester. And if they're out of town or if they're far, like maybe we go visit them, or when they come to Charlottesville, we connect. And then in addition to that, work for first gen students, just connecting with some of my favorite students at Lugo McGinnis Academy. So for those who are not familiar, Lugo McGinnis is people would say alternative school, but not quite. I would say it's, an alternate education opportunity for students who are in Charlottesville City Schools and who went to CHS or go to CHS. And I have learned that, many of us have stigmatized what alternative school can actually look like. But in the past year, I've had the opportunity to go over there on some, chill opportunities during lunch or when they have like actual events. And I've gotten to grow closer with some of those students. And I feel like there's like a real opportunity for the community to meet them halfway. And I know they have like community time on Fridays. So that's been cool.
And shouts out to Dr. Trotter and the staff too. Doing great work.
They're doing really good work. And the counselor over there, Ms. Phelps, she's awesome. And I can literally text her about anything and she's really quick to respond. So that's helpful. Mrs. Washington, who's over there, who's doing great work too, to connect with the students. So I've been able to connect with some of those students over the summer and make sure that they're staying, out of trouble, but also like getting them into wellness activities. I took a few students to the mountains, like Skyline Drive a couple of times, and they were like, wow, we've never been up here. And I'm like, it's not that far from, town, but like if your parents don't have a car or whatever, you may not be able to get there. So it's like those little things that we take for granted. I was able to, experience with them this summer for the first time. And so just like reminding them that like good conversation is good, having deep, thoughtful conversations about literally anything, but also just getting out into nature is a way to clear your mind. And I think we talk about how we prevent violence and some of the uptick in like violence that we've seen in our community, and, infusing wellness activities or focusing on ways to just decompress is a way that we can help prevent some of that violence. And then lastly, trying to support some of the teen mothers or teen parents. I want to say parents because I want to be inclusive, because teen fathers need help too.
That's right.
And so at Lugo last year, I came across a few teen moms who were students at Lugo McGinnis, and they needed milk or whatever. And it was as simple as me just like going to the store, picking it up, bringing it to the school. And they were so grateful. And I realized it's a reoccurring need within our community, across like just the community, not just high school students, recent high school graduates or students who are at other local high schools. So I've been doing like shopping, mutual aid collections for some of those moms. But then I was like, we need a resource closet. So I'm working with the counselor at Lugo and hopefully at CHS to be able to just have like a resource closet where there's like formula, Pampers, wipes, things like that are always a need, and that they don't have to like explain a full story. Like it's just like, I just need this. It's low barriers. So that they have access to what they need, because we know that can create a barrier for them not to go to school. And so my goal is like, okay, if this is what's standing in between you getting good grades or graduating on time, let's just get it done. Like we don't have to, have a whole big thing for it. So that's kind of been what my work has been looking like. It's just always connecting resources to those who need them.
Yeah, you bring a lot of great questions to mind. First, thank you for doing this. And I'm curious, you being someone that's from the city of Charlottesville, and you understand, you've navigated all the moving pieces of going from being a teen and going to college and into your career and whatnot. What have you found has been sort of the biggest like requests of students? Because I think us as parents, us as community members, volunteers, whatever, like we have our idea sometime, but maybe that may just be like within the circles that we work with. But I'm curious on, if it was that one thing that you feel like is a resounding request, how can we be most helpful?
Yeah. Wow. I think there are so many, but I think the biggest thing is like having someone to help them navigate the process, right? There are so many little things like the FAFSA, getting a computer that's reliable and things like that. But if there are people who are like, if the student is interested in the field that I'm currently in or something that I studied, if they want to connect with a student, I feel like that's so big, especially the alums who are still active at their universities, their alma maters, and who donate or who have connections still on those campuses. It's really helpful because it's like, okay, we can give them all their dorm essentials. We can get them the computers, but once they get there, we need to know that they're like in good hands. So someone who is an alum or who has worked at a university who can help facilitate that transition on like a connection type level is really helpful. And so, I mean, there's always the request for, if you have resources, if you have computers that are in good condition and you want to give them to a student, that's always helpful. If you want to donate Tide Pods or whatever, detergent, whatever, to a student, that's helpful. But also if you want to take a little bit of your time and maybe talk to a student a couple of times as they're transitioning, I think that would be helpful. I think that parents do want to support, because I know we often hear like, oh, the parents need to do more, the parents need to step up. But like, again, if they're first in their family to attend, how would their parents be, an expert on navigating that process? So I think having someone who can also talk to the parents and kind of be that in between like them and their university faculty or their campus, and then the parent and the student, like someone to just keep it all together would be super helpful. And I know I had the students who received help this time fill out a survey, and multiple of them said we would be interested in continued mentorship. So I think like having some mentoring opportunities would be really helpful. Women and men, or people who are non-binary, just community members in general, to be inclusive, like would, if you want to do something like that, definitely reach out, and I can provide an email address too for that. But I know that that's a big need. And so like I said, money is good, right? It helps us get the items that we need, but time and just check-ins go a long way. We had a student who, my mentor, Dr. Brackett, she's now out in Tacoma, Washington, and teaching at the University of Puget Sound. She's from Charlottesville, and she actually started a scholarship in her mother's honor at Monticello High School. But we connected with a student who was going all the way to California, and within 24 hours, we got her a ticket for the plane because she didn't have a way to get there, but she was accepted. Tuition was figured out. It was just like, how's she going to get there and how's she going to get the things that she needs for her dorm? And so we were able to do that within 24 hours, going on social media crowdfunding. But also I was able to spend some time with her and like talk with her to make sure she was feeling okay about it. I mean, that's a big step, like leaving a small town like Charlottesville, getting on a plane and like not looking back and being like, I'm about to start a whole new journey on the other coast. Like that's huge. So someone like her would need someone to check in and say like, are you good? Is there something that you do need? Like, I know you have a dining hall plan and everything like that, but like, how's your heart? Like, how are you mentally? So I think that that's a huge piece that first-gen students do need, because I know my first year, if I didn't have mentors like Dr. Donna, she's my soror now, but when I first met her, we were not sorors, and she literally put her hand on me and was like, I got you. And she didn't lie because I could hit her up at any time. And it was like, okay, she will respond. Or
Awesome.
Mimi Arbite, you know, a community member from Charlottesville, an activist who was always there. So it's like, for those students who are moving outside of home, it's hard. And Charlottesville is such a small town. Can you imagine like moving outside of that space? It's like, it's scary.
Right.
So I think having those people who can just be reachable at any time would be a huge help.
Yeah. You know, Zai, what I hear
you.
you saying much more than like the practical matters of what you are helping people with is that you're helping our youth navigate life, right? They may not necessarily have the leadership that they need or the example that they need in the home or in their neighborhood. And, you know, they have so many questions. They've never done it before. So who do I go to? And then for those who look like they may be taking the right steps and making the right decisions, that may be so far away and not in proximity, but just so far away. Like, I don't, it's kind of like, it may be like an anomaly as to how are you doing this? How did you get it right? You know, and make things line up for yourself. And I think that older folks aren't always good at teaching our youth how to navigate life, especially at this day and age, right? That may have worked 30 years ago or 50 years ago, but things are different now. And sometimes we can be hard-headed and expect our kids or the younger generations to kind of view and do things the same way we do. And so I applaud you for that. And we all need to recognize that our kids need much more guidance and leadership than we may think that they need. I remember making some mistakes straight out of high school and having a conversation with my mom who said, I thought you knew better because I've never done this before. I don't know what, you know, somebody's got to teach me, right? I mean, age doesn't necessarily mean you should know better. And so what you're doing for these kids is invaluable. And thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed.
All right, here come the villain. Now, this is, I have to ask it, right? Because Charles and Max both summed it up well. And I need you to help me understand, because I got a lot of younger children, right? How do you not vilify a child's decisions, but at the same time hold them accountable for the dumb S that they do? You know, so I mean, I'm speaking for the one that Max talking about, the old school generation that don't understand that I'm tired of telling you 15 times, and I'm that. And I don't see myself changing no time soon. So I am up for help for people to show me. But there is a problem because society, especially white society, has told Black America how to manage their kids. Like what we can do, what we can't say, how we got to say it, what we, you know, all these type of things. But they protect them until they turn 17, 18, and then they want to lock them up. So I'm from the generation, I'm going to be on you because, one, I don't want to be cleaning up all your mistakes all the time. But two, I'm not going to be here forever. And I need to know that you know how to think outside of being told what to do and be a follower every step of your life. So that medium for me is difficult, you know, and it comes out abrasive. It comes out rough. It comes out fussing. It comes out not emotionally attacked. Max and Charles both have worked with me on that. You know, I'm not even going to hide that. But at the same time, I'm from the prison system that Hurley was talking about. I was 18 years old. They tried to charge me with 100 years. You know, why would I want that for my children or anybody that I care about? So there's a difference between getting pulled over and getting a misdemeanor and getting your license taken and a police officer whipping you, because when the war on drugs was on, they looked at you no different than a slave. It was just modern day. So I don't want that for my kids. So when I see young ladies like yourself doing great work, I'm cheering for you. But at the same time, I wouldn't have a problem with telling you if I saw you doing something where you was out of pocket. Where's that medium at?
Well, that was a loaded question. And it had many, many pieces and layers. I'll say this. I'm not a parent, so I can't really give much insight to the parenting process. But what I can say, as someone who does volunteer with young people, I think it's important to put yourself in the shoes of the young person, right? So if someone's like yapping at you and nagging you and just like coming at you, obviously you're going to shut down. And so emotionally, we know that if there's not an open door policy and there's not like an actual conversation when someone's shouting at you, there's not a conversation. And so if that's the case, like I would shut down too, even at my age of 23. Like, I mean, so I think it's important to think about that. Additionally, I would say that it's hard to imagine what's possible if you've never been there. So if you are raised around, a family environment where, the carceral system has been such a heavy part of your family life and has taken over that, it's hard to imagine what a family life outside of that looks like. And so if you haven't been outside of the boundaries of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and you don't know that there's a whole big wide world out there, it's easy to make decisions that may cost you your future, and that could prohibit you from experiencing the big wide world out there. So I think about it in that lens. And so that's why I'm like, okay, well, how do we get you signed up for new opportunities? How do we get you enrolled in new programs? Or how do we establish a rapport on a foundational level where I have a friend, I'm not going to say his name on air, but he's a young student, and he texts me the other day and he's like, Zy, what you doing? I'm like, nothing, but I hope you're at school. And he's like, I am. And then he sends me proof that he's at school. And then 10 minutes later, he sends me that he got 100 on his quiz.
Nice.
And then the next day, another 100 on his quiz. And it's just like, okay, so there's that rapport there. So then, because if there's no rapport, I can't check you. I can't say you need to do blah, blah, blah if I don't really know you for real. So I think that that's the piece of like connecting with the youth is first before we can correct anyone. And so, Razor, if you were walking down the street, like if we're going to be honest, and you just came at me and you were just like, I would be like, okay, like he's an elder, so I'm going to just let him do his thing. But then when he's done, I'm going to just let it go out the other ear, because it's like, you don't know me, sir. Like, and so it's like, I think we're not at that place in our community anymore where it's like, we say we believe in a village, but we don't really have that like community vibe anymore. So it's not where we can just walk up to people and start checking them or holding them accountable. Accountability requires community first. And so I think, to answer your question, if we were to start on the foundational level of trying to connect with people and to get to know how they are, who they are, what their life experiences are, we'd have a better response to some of their decisions, and we could call them in without calling them out.
I'm also like, I agree 100% with you, but I'm also from that generation. If I'm trying to keep you from it, don't come to me after you done messed up. You know, fair. So then our community is messed up again. Like you said, I hear you, but I can't chase no child. Like I can't, me personally, I would rather find somebody that can reach them, and I be there in other support ways. You know, I know my limitations, so I'm not going to force nothing, but that I know is wrong, in the hopes of making sure that the child feels like they're heard or they got a voice or whatever. Because while the Bible says they might be led by a child, I ain't going off cliff for nobody.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was with you. If you're still in that lane, go ahead.
So the only thing that I was going to ask is whether or not kind of your approach to what you described, how children or youth today have to be engaged in order to kind of to reap the benefits that we all desire for them, for our community world. Do we need to implement those type of things into our school system? Will it work in that scenario as well, or is there a different approach?
Yeah. And so there's like restorative justice practices. I know that Charlottesville High School, I think, had like a conference or like a day-long training for people who were parents, community members, community partners, to come and understand about what that actually means. But I mean, if we're talking about like reparative processes, having mediations with students and teachers, but not in the way that we've traditionally done it, where it's like we sit across the table and we talk about our problems, because that doesn't really do much. It is a facilitated process that actually, you know, infuses wellness and like emotional, like maturity and awareness. All of those things are so important. And I think that that's one way that we can do that. I think additionally, I love that Charlottesville High School, or Charlottesville City Schools, has the student rep on the school board. So when I was in high school, when I was a senior, I was a student rep. And so bringing that student voice into some of the policy aspects of how we make changes in the school division is important too. We have student council, right? We have like student elected bodies that are supposed to be in conversation with our administration, as long as the administration is actually listening and open to those conversations. But I think even within the schools or on the community level, there needs to be more trust too. Like we have to like, I got to a place where some of these Lugo students at first were like, who is this girl? Oh, this is Zanaya and Zania's sister. So we'll kind of talk to her a little bit, but like, she doesn't understand us. She goes to UVA. She's not. And it's like, but unfortunately, I mean, I have some of the same experiences that they may have, but we don't know it. We judge a book by its cover, right? So like, what if we walked into spaces more and we talked about our background, where we're from? Like, what if my first opener was like, instead of listing off all of my accomplishments or my titles, it was like, but I'm from 10th and Page. Like, how does that open up the conversation in a different way? And so I think that was one thing for me. But two, I had like between 5 and 7 young men that I was like being in conversation with this summer, taking them on wellness activities, just like engaging with them, kind of mentoring them, right? And they started by saying a lot of crazy things around me. Like, they would use the B word. They would say colorist things. They would say homophobic things. And I'm like, we're not going to do that. But not just we're not going to do that. Let's actually talk about why that's problematic. And then over time, they would stop themselves before they started using the B word. And I'm like, y'all know, I don't want to hear it again. And it's like, not I'm trying to be their mom, not I'm trying to give auntie vibes, but it's like, the more we say it and the more it's like said around us and it's entering into like our psychological gates, we start to normalize it internally. So if I say, okay, every time you get in my car, we're not going to vape, we're not going to say the B word, like, it just becomes a cleaner space. It's a cleaner slate for us to just engage and talk and have pure conversation.
Which unfortunately has to be taught.
Right. And it does. It does have to be taught. But I think it was never in a way that was punitive or like as if I was punishing them or I was policing them. And when you don't police youth, I feel like you have a much better space to really have like true and honest engagement. And I see that over at Lugo. Like, it doesn't feel like a police state. There, it's not very restrictive in that way. And I feel like students are in there like expressing their full selves. They're able to dress how they, feel, of course, within guidelines and limits. So it's appropriate for school, but they're able to dress how they want. They're able to play music that they enjoy. But again, if it gets them to show up into the space, like, how are we getting young people into the space is the biggest question, because it's like, once you're in there, you can have dope conversations. You can, there are so many possibilities, but getting them into the door is really important. And you only do that if it feels like a safe space. So I think like back to the questions that both of you asked, it's like, how do we do that? And I guess on a community level, it really comes from like building trust, but also relating to each other. And I think a lot of us have experiences that we feel like, oh, I've moved past, I'm in a new phase of my life. But it's like, someone could really benefit from you sharing about that past phase of your life and what you went through and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, that's big. Yeah. Something that you said a minute ago, like really blew my mind, because a lot of times myself, like like when I think Zyhana Bryant, I'm like, everybody knows Zyhana Bryant, their story, right? So then, it blows my mind for a student to then be like, oh, well, like, like that's just their sister. You know what I mean? It's like, but it really brings to mind though about how a lot of times even Black men and Black women like get at odds with each other without even really like understanding where the other is coming from. Or we already talked about like the age difference and how that could juxtapose. We also see in Charlottesville a lot, you have people who may be born here, and then you have people who may be transplants here, right? And so you kind of look at each other differently because you don't think that the other understands you. But I'm thinking that like we definitely have more in common than we have different, and we really need to give each other a chance. If people trying to help, trying to do the work, why not let them?
And it's easier said than done. Let's be clear. Absolutely. It's easier said than done. We all have human nature of just like prejudging people, having misconceptions about things before we walk into situations. And it's like, I feel like the older I get, the more I've even challenged myself on that. It's like, okay, like, yes, you think this thing, but have you ever talked to this person for real? No. If not, then like, maybe just try. Like, don't, have an open mind.
You growing.
Listen, I'm growing a lot. Maybe it's graduate school. I don't know. But yeah, like, I think like just having those moments where you want to actually hear people out and talk to them is one big thing. But I also think that, let's be clear, Charlottesville is very tribalistic. And I feel like you and I have talked about this before on air. And it's just like, people can come from the outside and get so much love, so much praise, so much clout, if you will. But people will not support people that they went to high school with. And I've experienced that firsthand. And I've even been a part of the problem too. I'm like, well, I went to school with them, But it's like, how do we change that? How do we move away from that? And I feel like once we kind of challenge ourselves to do that, and on a community level, we will start to have better conversations, because I don't want to dismiss that. Charlottesville is very welcoming. Black Charlottesville is very welcoming to outsiders, more so than people that they've known their whole lives. And I think that a lot of that has to do with our own personal forgiveness and forgiveness of others. And I don't mean that like you can't feel a way if someone did something to you, but I mean more so of like we went to high school together, and 15 years ago, so-and-so did something to me in B Commons. And so for that reason, I don't want to talk to them anymore. But, and I understand that, like, personal feelings are real. People have feelings. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but you know this person has been working really hard on their project, but you'll support someone who's doing the exact same thing, who's from states away, who just came in, and you'll trust them so quickly without trusting the people that you know from Charlottesville. And people get frustrated and upset about it. And then they're just like, I don't want to do anything.
Let's trade the word trust for value.
Because
that's what it is.
That's fair. That's fair. They'll value someone from outside before they value someone from Charlottesville. And it is hurtful. Like someone who's grown up here and who does community work. I'm sometimes almost flabbergasted at the ways that people who are not from here, you know, get the funding, they get all of the things. And it's like, but the people who are born and raised here, who are just trying to give back to their community, are fighting for these very crumbs of resources. And that's something that Tanisha Hudson talks about all the time. And I actually agree with her. Like, you know, she's making very valid points. Like she's, you know, worked hard to create like a festival in Charlottesville and to do, you know, great things to highlight local artists and local people who have done things like Damien and his basketball league. And then we see people who are not from here do the exact same thing and get tons of funding, tons of applause. And it creates resentment. And it's just like, I feel like we talk about how we tear ourselves down within our community. Well, that's one way.
Yeah. And in my I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, from my perspective, I'm kind of someone that's sort of in the middle of that dynamic, because I'm from a surrounding county. But so that means when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time in Charlottesville, had made a lot of friends I grew up with. But there's still times where I'm also reminded that, but you didn't grow up in Charlottesville, or you know what I mean? So so I can see it both ways. Like, but I definitely respect where you're coming from. You know, but I think that's a lot of healing that you know we have to do. And it's about trust. The rapport we talk about with the younger people, like that, those same steps could be done to manage our adult relationships as well. You know?
Yeah, it could be a both and thing. I don't think it has to be like we're closed off to outsiders. But I do think we should, as Max said, like value the people that are here. Give them their flowers when they're doing great things. And join them. Like we could really do so much if we build coalitions. And I know everyone says that, like unity, we can do so much when we work together. But like, what does that actually mean, right? Like if you say that you're working on this project and you know that I have the resources, the assets, whatever to do that, maybe we should talk about working together. And obviously sometimes that requires like conversations, healing, you know, moving past whatever, actually sorting through some of the things that have happened in the past. But I think that like, that's the best way that we can help the youth is by modeling better behavior. And so, I mean, it's like, it's hard as a 23-year-old if the 23-year-olds are the people, or the 24-year-olds are the people who are giving back to the youth and like trying to pour into them. But we still have the people who are older than us showing that toxic behavior. Like, who are we learning from? Like, we don't have all of the answers. We're still middle age. We're not even middle age. We're like middle youth, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, we still need those wise examples to exist out there and to help us too. So it's like, people are like, oh, Gen Z is doing great work, but Gen Z still needs the other generations to help us as well.
Can I just say, and I'm going to be completely transparent right now. So piggybacking off of the comments that you just made. So I saw the GoFundMe campaigns that were on Facebook, that you put on Facebook for the first year college students, right? I saw what the goals were, and I kind of sat back and waited to see if people would support you as far as raising that money to get these kids to school, just because of the same reasons that we're discussing right now. I will also say I didn't give anything, and I got a ton of kids myself, and that's one of the reasons why. But because of the issues that I know exist in the city, same ones we're talking about, I did want to see how that turned out. And fortunately, people stepped up, they gave, and you made it happen.
Well, I will say most of my support comes from outside of Charlottesville. It's always been that way. Since 2020, when I first started crowdfunding, a lot of my support comes from outside of Charlottesville. In fact, there's a scholar that I love so much. I've cited her work throughout my time in undergrad. She literally saw my Instagram post, like on my story, the fundraiser, she dropped $5,000, and that got us way closer to the goal, because the goal was only, I think, $8,000, right? So if one person who's states away gives 5,000, and then other people who may be UVA alums or professors who are not from Charlottesville, who may be white, give large amounts, we reach our goal, right? And so that's not to take away from the other folks who are on, like, Black and brown, who are on the ground, who are from Charlottesville, who are giving smaller amounts. Every dollar is appreciated. Every share is appreciated. But I will say that, like, if I were to title or tally up the numbers, vast majority of my support comes from outside of Charlottesville. And I think that's why it's so important to me to, like, be so transparent with, like, what our process is like. We go shop with the students, we meet with the students, all of these things, because these people are not in Charlottesville. They can't see it with their own eyes. They trust that this work is what we say it is, and that the money is going to what it is supposed to go to. So, you know, some people will say, oh, well, I don't get why certain people post so many things on social media. We need to let the people know that we have receipts for everything, you know, that we do. And I think that's one part. But then it's also like, how do we get people in Charlottesville to feel inclined to give back to those who are in their own community? And I think that's a challenging thing. I mean, the economy is not the best right now, so I don't ever fault anyone who's not able to give funds. But if you could share, I mean, a share goes a long way, because there could be someone who does have the resources, that is your friend or sees it and is able to, again, drop that $5,000, drop that $100, whatever, that moves us closer to the goal. So it's all appreciated. But yeah, that's definitely something I've noticed. Or it's like, oh, well, so-and-so's doing this exact same work. Why do I need to give to this fundraiser? And it's like, well, you know, it's okay for other people to do similar work. There's actually enough
a
space.
Need.
That's right.
Yeah. There's enough space at the table for us all. And so I don't think that it has to be a competing type of interest. I actually refer some people to local nonprofits to receive some of that help, rather than me trying to, like, manage all these different requests that are very different. I try to focus on moms who need housing support, or like grocery, food costs and stuff, and they have kids, young people who are, you know, Gen Z, young 20s or whatever, who need help with housing costs and things like that. Or, you know, like students who are in K through 12. I try to focus on that and prioritize that. And if you fall outside of that, I'm not going to turn you away, but I will refer you to someone who does more of the work, focus on what you need.
Yeah. And a big part of that too is just learning the game as well. It's like, the fact of the matter is, like you said, you could have two similar organizations, right? And one may know the tricks of the trade, so to speak. The other may not. So, you know, so another thing that I think that would help us as well is relaying that knowledge, right? Like even a Zyhana Bryant, like there could be another Zyhana Bryant growing up right now in Charlottesville. You know what I mean? So, but the fact is that, like, nobody should hate on your success while maybe the next Zyhana Bryant maybe still figuring it out. It's a matter of us, like, relaying that info to be like, this is how you do it. You know what I mean? Like this is how I got to that point. You know, a lot of times we don't do that. We just look at, you know, like you said, the competition more so than the education.
Right.
You know.
Because that next Zyhana Bryant will feel very discouraged if they see how current Zyhana Bryant is treated, right? Like if they see current Zyhana Bryant receiving all this hate and just like negative energy while she's trying to do positive things, who wants to subject themselves to that?
Right.
So it's like, how do we say we want the young people to do all these great things, and then we have people who are in their 70s hating on the 20-year-olds? And that's happened to me. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, I thought you were like my elder and I look up to you. You're doing great work. And then it's like, but you're talking really like cash crap about me around town. And it's like, so what young person would want to deal with that? Who wants to see their like their heroes turn into a villain?
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Razor, because you call yourself the villain.
You don't get a name like Razor for selling Girl Scouts.
Oh my Lord.
Hey, so we are up against the time, but one thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if Max had more as well, but Zyhana, so I'm thinking about the sustainability. Great work that you're doing with teen parents, as well as first gen college students and so on and so forth. Have you branded yourself yet? Because a lot goes through Zy, right? Like we know Zy's passion, but whether it's when this young person turns 18 and then they got to know what public services to get to, or it's when Zyhana may move, or when Zyhana's not here anymore. Like, have you considered the sustainability and what that looks like? Like not only for your work, but also for the teams that you're helping.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. That is something important that I'm always trying to focus on, like trying to help them understand that you can do this work too. And I think I have my own kind of political thoughts about how we turn everything into a nonprofit. Cause Charles, we've been in meetings together where we talk about the number of nonprofits that are in this very small area, and it's actually way too many. So I'm not trying to create another nonprofit. But I do think that there could be like youth advocacy trainings in the future. And that's something that I've really been thinking about, how to kind of like operationalize some of this stuff. And so I think that would be really powerful. And so that's why I started under Congregate Seville. They're like our fiscal sponsor. We started Black Girl Builders. And the group of that is Black Girl Builders. It was some teen Black women who I went to high school with who have started the BYAC with me back in 2020. That was a Black Youth Action Committee. We held protests. We did mutual aid Sundays downtown every Sunday. We gave back during Christmas time and during back to school. And then over time, it grew to more people just wanting to partner. So some UVA students, some Charlottesville community members. And so I think that beyond it being like a banner or a name that things fall under, I think it's more so like teaching people how to do it. I don't get offended or upset when I see other people doing mutual aid requests. In fact, I actually donate to it and share it, because it's like, this is a skill that people need to know. Mutual aid is not one person's brand. It's a collective skill. It's a way of doing community work, and it predates Charlottesville. It goes far, far way back. It's a political ideology about collectivism and how we do community. So I think I'm excited when I see other people doing mutual aid. I'm excited when I see people, connecting with other young people. So I think it's more so of like spreading the sauce. If you have it, if you know kind of the recipe, if you know how to do it, then share it with others and make sure that they understand it too. So when people want to grab lunch or just chat about it, I'm always happy to do that, especially if they're a young person, because I feel like young people, it's so hard for us to get meetings with the people we love, right? It's hard to like figure out how, I adore this person who's doing great work, but I don't know how to reach out to them. I don't know how to get a meeting with them. So I try not to ever create that barrier for other young people. But yeah, I definitely think that it's a matter of training other youth as they're in high school, as they're in early college, so that we keep it going, and then they're supposed to pass the skills back. And I saw something interesting. I know that Marquand, I think another student was doing it. I think they were doing like a FAFSA workshop for local students. And I know they went to one of the local high schools. I think Marquand went to AHS, but I was really excited about that, because I was like, I'm not sure if it happened already or it's about to happen this fall, but like, that's exciting. Like students who have gone through the process of filling out the FAFSA, teaching others. I think the bottom line is that like, as you climb up or as you get access to more spaces, you should be reaching back for at least one other person.
That's right.
In all spaces and in all ways.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Zyhana.
Well, thank you again, Zai, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. Always about the good work and what you're doing here for this city and probably across what you're doing, what's felt as far as your work across the country will live on forever. So
thank you so much. I appreciate y'all.